Welcome to r/best of Redditor updates, where OP has a crazy stalker. Our next Reddit post is from r/am I the butthole. Am I the butthole for having my ex arrested at my wedding? This happened 2 days ago at mine and my wife's wedding, and a lot of people are telling me that I'm in the wrong for having my ex arrested, and my wife is saying I ruined the wedding and caused a scene. For a little backstory on my ex, we were together over 5 years ago for a matter of weeks. I broke things off because I just wasn't into her that much. She began to pester me over text and social media all the time to get back together or just hook up. This went on for months, and in a particularly weak moment, I gave in and slept with her again. At that point, things got a lot worse. I tried to explain that it was a mistake, and I still don't want anything with her. From then, the messages ranged from abusive to begging me for intercourse. Eventually, I just blocked her. From then on, she started turning up at my house, work, and social spaces I went to often. She attempted to force herself on me and threatened violence, and at that point, I got a restraining order. Since then, I haven't heard from her in years. I met my wife 3 years ago, and she's honestly the best thing in my life. We fell in love hard and honestly have a great relationship. We got engaged after 2 years, and 2 days ago we finally had our wedding. The day was going amazingly until a friend of mine, Chris, turned up with his +1, my ex. I spoke to Chris and he had absolutely no idea about my history with her, and we tried to get her to leave. After she refused to leave, I decided to just call the police. 2 officers showed up to arrest her for breaking her restraining order, and she flipped out. She was shouting and screaming. She hurled abuse at my wife and claimed that we were meant to be together, which obviously distracted from our wedding. Now my wife is upset with me for causing a scene, and a lot of our friends are saying that I should have just ignored it and focused on the day because she wasn't causing any problems, up until the police showed up. So, am I the butthole? Everyone, including OP's wife, who are taking the side of the crazy woman are honestly stupid. Because do they honestly believe that this woman was just gonna come to this wedding that she manipulated her way into and then just leave without making a scene? No way, man. All OP did by calling the cops was speed up when the crazy scene happened because it was an inevitability. Then the next day, OP posted an update. It's been a very long day since I first posted. I've spoken to both my wife and Chris. Starting with my wife, we had a very long, tearful conversation about everything from my ex to our wedding. I apologize for the fact that I didn't consider involving her before calling the police, which meant that my ex's outburst when being escorted out came as a complete surprise to her. She apologized for the way that she reacted and explained that she wasn't angry at me, but is angry at my ex. The fact that the wedding was ruined and that the focus was shifted away from us and to the ex. Her anger was misdirected. Another reason for the anger is that a lot of the guests had no idea who the ex was. So my ex's comment of, "we're meant to be together," has apparently led to people theorizing that I'd been cheating on my wife with my ex. So now we're having to put out fires before rumors begin to spread. My wife is now very much focused on making sure that I'm okay after all of this, though she's still distraught about our special day being ruined, but we'll work through that together. On to Chris. This is where things get a little scary. Me and my wife called him together. Firstly, to check that he's okay, he is. And secondly, to see how the hell she managed to worm her way into his life in order to get to my wedding. According to Chris, they connected over social media. She started liking his posts over the course of about a month, and then DM'd him, and they started chatting from there. The crazy part is that to Chris, my ex is under a completely different name. But the post on her profile dated back 3 years, meaning that she's had this profile with a fake name for at least 3 years, and it's not her only fake profile. Chris told us that a few other guys contacted him after the wedding, saying that they recognized her as they'd all gotten DMs from her on her different accounts. All with a different name. There's at least 3 other accounts that we're currently aware of. Apparently, my ex showed no signs of being obsessed with me or even that she knew who I was. Chris invited her as a +1 to the wedding, thinking that they might eventually get serious, as they were having a really good time together. He's apologized profusely, but we've made it clear that we don't blame him for this. There's been no word currently on what's going on with my ex, but considering her breaching the restraining order and resisting arrest, we assume that she'll probably end up in prison. Me and my wife have spoken about it, and if we're contacted by the police, we'll absolutely press charges, and my wife will also be getting a restraining order. For now, we're going to try to enjoy our honeymoon and deal with the rest of this mess when we get back. Down in the comments, 5x5 gives some perspective on how illogical stalkers are. She says, I had a stalker from the time that I was 16 to my mid-30s when he finally gave up. We never even dated. Stalking is not rational. Our next Reddit post is from r/relationships. My boyfriend and I first met 5 years ago while we were both in school. He comes from a fairly wealthy family who paid for his entire education, both undergrad and graduate school, and have basically funded his entire life. Up until 3 years ago, I didn't know any of this. I, on the other hand, come from a solidly middle-class family and have been supporting myself fully since I graduated. Before that, my parents helped me out, but I also worked to put myself through college. When we first started dating, my boyfriend and I more or less split everything evenly. Barring a few circumstances, we always bought our own dinner, movie tickets, chipped in for gas on road trips, etc. He never once mentioned his or his family's money. After a year of dating, I met his parents and figured it all out. At the time, I was a bit miffed that our date nights were still eating frozen pizza on the couch of my crappy apartment. But I loved him, not his money, so I went with it. I also justified it by it being his money and he can do what he wants with it. And also, at the time, I figured his parents were just his meal ticket until he was out of school, and then he would be more independent. We live together now. I've learned that is not the case. While he does work, his parents have no intention of ever cutting him off, and he has enough inheritance or whatever money to keep him afloat even if they did. I work too, but make significantly less than him. And I definitely don't have a rich grandparent somewhere leaving me half the world. This leads us to our problem. My boyfriend has always lived a fairly modest life. He buys nice clothes and nice things for himself, but that's about it. We live in an apartment that we can afford to split 50-50. We have furniture that we can afford to split 50-50. All of this isn't a problem, I guess. I do think relationships should be equal. But then there's the other stuff. His sister got married the end of May in Maine, about a 6-hour flight from where we live. Obviously, he expected me to go, but I was responsible for all of my ticket and half the hotel and food and car rental. This was a serious strain on my finances. When we moved in together, he brought along his dog. Now, I love this animal and love having him in our apartment, but my boyfriend now considers it our dog now and expects me to pay for half his food and other expenses. If he didn't already have this dog, I would have held off on getting a dog of our own for another year or two until I was a little more stable financially. And then there's things like groceries. My boyfriend will often complain about how we can't afford nicer groceries from Whole Foods or other specialty stores because I'm paying my half and my half just won't cover it. I have mentioned that he can pay for what he wants, but he just says that we need to split it and he knows that I can't afford it, which at least isn't hypocritical, I guess. He's also mentioned recently wanting to move to a nicer apartment in a nicer part of town. He's even toured a few places and leaves printouts on top of my lunch for work. While I could technically afford it, using that high of a percentage of my income for rent makes my head hurt. It goes against every fiber of my being. I've told him if he was willing to split it a bit more, like 60-40 instead of 50-50, I would be willing, but he refuses. I understand where he's coming from. I don't want to be a gold-digging girlfriend that asks for thousands to be spent on her, but it kind of annoys me that we're living a poor, recent graduate lifestyle when we could be living so much more nicely with no real added expenses to him. Is this unreasonable? It also worries me for the future. I want to marry and have a family with this guy. Is he going to deny our kids a private school education because I can't afford half when he could pay it 5 times over? Are we going to take them to lesser doctors because I can't afford half the insurance when he could pay the entire visit out of pocket? I'm not saying we need to live lavishly. I just wish everything didn't have to be 50-50 when we're not financially equal. I just don't know if I'm being unreasonable. He seems to think that the wealth of the family should match the lowest common denominator. Then, the next day, OP posted an update. It's been a long afternoon. He got home early this afternoon, and I had my presentation ready for him. He listened to everything I had to say about not thinking things were fair, how his wants were starting to cause a financial strain on me, how I wish we could work out some sort of new system. The conversation didn't last long. I laid it all out. He listened without saying a word. As soon as I was done, he said that he would not budge on the 50-50 split. That's the way it'll be until after we're married, and it's not something he's willing to compromise on. I told him, if that's the case, then I don't know if we'd be able to continue the relationship. He said that if that was the way I felt, then that was the way it was going to be because he wasn't budging. He did say that we could get married very soon if it was that big of a deal to me, but at that point, I was pretty much over it. I'm not going to marry someone before I'm ready just for financial security. So he left to take his dog for a walk. I packed up some of my things and had a coworker with a truck come and help me load some stuff up. When I was ready to go, my ex-boyfriend handed me a check. Apparently, during all of this, he had figured out how much he owed me. Our apartment lease is up at the end of August, and we had prepaid. He had written out the check for my half, as well as what he estimated was left of the groceries that I wouldn't be consuming and what he figured I'd spent on dog expenses over the course of our relationship. Yeah, so I guess he was fair to the very end. I've told him I'll be back on Friday to get the rest of my things. Now I'm staying with a good friend who has an extra bedroom, and I'm hoping I can find a new apartment soon. So things definitely didn't go the way I planned. I'm not happy about it, but I guess I'm glad I figured out now instead of a year from now when I'm shopping for a wedding dress. What a weird guy. What's the point of being rich and having lots of money if you're not going to use it to make your life better? To potentially give up the love of your life over, I don't even know, an extra $1,000 a month in expenses when the guy's apparently loaded? It seems like he just wants to sit on his giant pile of money like a dragon and no one's allowed to touch it. Our next Reddit post is from r/relationship advice. My boyfriend Derek owns a bunch of businesses. A few days ago, he wanted to meet with a representative of a restaurant chain in order to acquire one of the stores. Derek invited Alex, the representative, to have dinner with us at a fancy restaurant. Things were going well, and when Derek left for the bathroom, Alex and I began to talk. Alex told me that his family was originally from Russia, and I told him my father trained in the Russian army. When Derek came back, I was talking to Alex about a good borscht recipe. Derek, for some reason, thought that I was annoying Alex and told me, "Alex came here to talk about business, not some dumb Russian soup." And then said, "Sorry about that, Alex. She talks a lot about useless anecdotes." I got red in the face, and Alex said, "Well, Derek, I care about dumb Russian soup because I'm Russian." Things were awkward, and long story short, Derek did not get approved for the franchise, and now he's blaming me for it. I feel really guilty, and I don't know what to do. And I can tell you what to do, dump the guy. What a jerk. Then the next day, OP posted an update. After what happened, I started to reflect on our relationship as a whole. I noticed the trend that whenever I talked to someone, Derek would always be hovering over me. Not just business partners, but his family too during events. Also, him insulting me for what I would say was a trend that I didn't notice until now. I told Derek about this in a last attempt to salvage our relationship because he still had some redeeming qualities. I told Derek I was thinking of breaking up because he didn't respect me. Derek claimed that I wouldn't because I needed his money. And I pointed out that I come from a upper middle class family and I'm studying to become a registered nurse. So I don't need anything from him but his respect. Derek then broke down and told me he grew up seeing his father putting down his mother all the time. Derek said that if I don't have my own opinions and if I rely on him for everything, I won't ever leave. Apparently that's what his father taught him. I don't know. I broke up with Derek and I blocked him and changed my phone number after he threatened to ruin my life and tell the university awful things about me. I was about to compliment this dude by saying, hey, at least he, has the self-awareness to understand his own problems. And then he then he went with the death threats or whatever. Never mind, taking that back. That was r/best of Redditor updates. And if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.